Sitting in the interrogation room, he asks the police for tea and some biscuits, just like how the serial killers do. Oh, I have all the information that you're in desperate need of. But first, give me a cigarette. But here it was a biscuit. Biscuit दो तो मैं बताऊंगा. Inspector Shatrughan Kumar could not believe his ears. It was crazy to him. Because if you think about it, the serial killer's feet barely touch the ground as he sits across them on the interrogation chair. Meena had gotten a job at the city as a housemaid for a month. She was in dire need of this money, but she couldn't take her son to the city as he was a newborn. So she requests her sister Parul to babysit her 6-month-old son. Parul couldn't agree to it initially, as they were also not financially well off. She already had a son Amarjeet and was pregnant with her second child. But Meena was persistent. She told her she would send her money as she earns in the city. So Parul agreed to it. She soon starts adjusting to having a newborn around. And she kind of thought it was a good practice as she was going to have a baby soon. She starts using Amarjeet's old clothes, old toys, old crib for the baby, as well as some of the things that Meena had left for her. One morning, she thinks to herself she needed vegetables for that day. So she calls her son Amarjeet and tells him, I'm going to the grocery store. Please take care of the baby. On hindsight, you might think it is not the smartest thing to do, leave a child to take care of an infant. But Amarjeet was used to being alone, and she knew she would be back in half an hour or so. Upon her return, she discovers that a child had disappeared. She asks her son, where is the baby? He gives her an unsettling smile. It was the type of smile kids give when they hide something of yours and you're looking for it. He then says, Mom, I killed him. She couldn't believe it. She thought he was joking. And she was like, no, this is not the time to play pranks on me. Please tell me where the baby is. He then grabs her hand and starts leading her to the backyard. Her heart starts beating so fast. The more they go towards the backyard, she feels so anxious. She's thinking, okay, he's going to take me to the backyard and I'm going to see a healthy baby on the ground. As soon as they reach the backyard, Amarjeet lifts his tiny little hand and points at the ground, which looked like a new patch of dirt and grass. She panics and she starts clearing the area, only to find her nephew's dead body with a bloodied head. She looked at him and he calmly says, I smashed his head with a brick repeatedly. She couldn't take this. She leaned over to the side and threw up. This was the first victim of the world's youngest serial killer, Amarjeet Sada.
2006, Bihar was still populated by people who didn't even have a high school degree. They lived in Begusarai, a quiet and beautiful village in Bihar. Begusarai, which at that time was a close-knit village populated with very few families. There, everybody knew everyone else. The Sada family was recognized as hard-working and earnest. They had a good reputation in the village. Amarjeet was beloved by his parents. They provided him with everything, despite their financial status. His father was a day laborer, meaning he would go to all these nearby farms and he would ask, do you guys need workers today? If they said yes, he would work that day and get paid for that one day, which would be around 70 to 80 bucks. And if they said no, he would have to move on to the next farm. And if all of them said no, he would have no work that day. It was an unstable job. That day, that ominous day, he had come home to his wife, panicking. She tells him that their son had killed someone. He unleashes his belt and start beating the kid with full force. Once they calm down, they are in full distress as to what to do. Instead of going to the police, they wait for a month for Meena, the dead baby's mother, to return. Meena comes home. Amar's parents are sitting on the couch, anxious, as if they were waiting to tell her a bad news. It is said that Amar's dad walked straight towards Meena and fell to his knees and said, "Please, it was just an accident." Meena was so confused and she looks at her sister who's sobbing on the couch. In between her sob, she says, "Amar and the baby were playing, but it was an accident and now he's dead. And we had to bury him because the neighbors were gonna find out." So they begged with a hysterical Meena, "Please, you can't let this get out. His life is going to be ruined. And it's not like it's gonna change anything. We will carry this burden for the rest of our lives. I promise you that." It is said that Meena, from a peripheral vision, saw Amar peeking out from the room and she could tell he was smiling. But for whatever reason, she didn't take this issue further and the Sada family carried on as if things never happened.
Amarjeet was definitely not a friendly child. He showcased many antisocial behaviors. The neighborhood friends say he was not fun loving like how the other kids were. He was described as an extra aggressive for some reason. Even while play fighting with the kids in the town, he would throw punches at them so hard it almost seemed like he really wanted them dead. Amma was also a stubborn child who would sulk and throw tantrums when he doesn't get his favorite toys. His parents seemed to really dote on him, despite his parents not being financially well off. I don't know whether it was just love for him or was it a son syndrome, because the parents thought that it was a mistake by Amma to kill a cousin infant. A one time mistake of a child who didn't know better. Maybe he will learn from it. Only after 8 months of the baby cousin's murder, they thought it was a good idea to bring another infant into the house. But this time, it was his own baby sister, Parul's second child. The parents told Amma that she's your own sister and you have to protect her. Everything was actually going good for them. Even Amar had built a good relationship with his few months old baby sister. He would look at her and smile at her fondly as a protective older brother does. And after some months, even she started to smile back at him. But one afternoon, everything changed. Paul and her husband were taking a nap like a normal day, as they usually do, and the baby was in the crib outside their room. It was a cloth like crib, and the house isn't that big, and the door is open, so if the baby cries, also, Paul can get to her in a few seconds. So, while her parents were asleep, Amar was playing with his toys in his room. Now, it's not known for what reason, whether it was just a sheer boredom of him or just curiosity. Amar suddenly, out of nowhere, jumped on his feet and went to his sister's crib. She was awake, staring blankly at the ceiling, and now looking at Amar. Amar, looking at her, he wrapped his tiny hands around her neck and choked her so hard she couldn't even make a sound, and she could only move her tiny hands and legs in a struggle. And after a few seconds, even that struggling had stopped. She had died. After killing her, Amar went back to his room to play with his toys as if nothing had happened. He was normal, as if he had done nothing or it was nothing new for him. When the parents woke up after the nap, and Parul went to the baby to check up on her as she always does, and when she stroked the baby, her hands immediately jerked back. The baby was stone cold. When she knew, she called her husband and she saw Amar playing with his toys. She ran to Amar and yelled, asking if he was the one who had killed her. He looked up at his mother and nodded. Some sources say that he was even smiling. Amar's father couldn't take this at all. He started beating and slapping him with full force of an adult man. And Amar was just there crying from all that hitting. His mother fell to the floor, sobbing hysterically. She was broken completely. Her daughter had died, and the person who had did it was her own son. From all the ruckus and chaos from the Sadaf house, the neighbors started gathering at the place and even rushed in. They saw what was happening. They understood what had happened. They tried to convince the dad to report this to the police, to which the dad said, I will kill Amar myself. The people had to physically hold the dad back to stop him. Now, Amar just there crying and he was mad. Like how a normal child gets mad from the yelling they get from their parents. He was mad from all the scoldings and punishments that he had received. And now he was screaming, so what if I had killed her? To which the neighbors were speechless and astonished. He says, so what? Like it's the normal thing. The neighbors then just left the place. There was nothing they thought they could do now. This was a hopeless kid. 2 days after this incident took place, Amma's parents appeared to each neighbor's doorsteps, begging them to stay quiet about this whole situation. They said that if you wanna help us, just please stay quiet. If word got out on what happened, it was likely that the father wouldn't get any work. I think the parents' logic was maybe they already lost one child and putting another one in jail would be effectively losing him as well. Maybe they hoped they could beat the murderous tendencies out of the son. Maybe they could keep him in control and be normal again.
Both the times the parents had said they'll teach the child a lesson and that he would never repeat something like this ever again. But nothing seemed to have changed because his next victim was an 8-month-old infant Khushbu. Khushbu's mom, Chonchun Devi, lived in the neighborhood. She was not related to the Sada family, nor did she knew any previous incidents of them. She couldn't run and finish her errands in her list carrying her 8-month-old baby. She thought the shops would be closed off and it would be late. So she decided to leave her daughter under a tree in a cloth crib. According to the sources, some say it was a house daycare where she left her child. This might be more than normal for the villagers as everyone knew everyone. They treat each other's babies as their own. After her work is done, Chunchun Devi returns to only find that her baby Khushbu is gone. Disappeared, she panics and goes in search of her everywhere. She asks the local for help to look for her baby. The locals were full on panicking and looking and wondering how could a baby be just gone from there? Who would have taken her? This is where the police gets involved. Once the news reaches the Sada family, an aunt of Amar, his own silent blood, approached Khushbu's mother, saying that she speculates that her 8-year-old nephew, who has a history with infant, might be involved in this. People did not take this lightly, as this is coming from an extended family member herself. The entire community formed an angry mob and stormed up to Sada's house. They demanded that the parents bring Amar to them. Initially, the parents tried to reason with the crowd, saying, he's just a boy. How could he be responsible for this? He's a kid. Besides, bring us the evidence and we will bring you Amar. The neighbors would not give in. They stood outside and waited until Amar was finally pushed out of home. And allegedly they were screaming, tell us, what did you did to that baby girl? Tell us. He bluntly looked at them and stated, I killed her. Some say He smiled while stating this. The crowd demanded he take them to where Khushbu was. Then Amar took the whole crowd to the edge of the town, and there was a dirty pile of rocks covered with dirt and pointed at it. They had found Khushbu dead.
Amar was finally arrested on May 30th, 2007. After munching on his biscuits dipped in tea, he starts confessing. Once his mom left to the grocery store, he went to the baby's crib and pinched the baby's cheeks. Then he violently slapped him as hard as he could. The baby kept crying while Amar was smiling. He strangled the baby to death. He then took the baby to the backyard. He stated he was still unsatisfied, so he smashed the baby's skull with a brick. When asked the reason, he stated he just felt like it and wanted to. He kept giggling throughout the confession, showing no remorse. If you think about it, the only reason all his victims were infants were because they were smaller and weaker compared to him. It is assumed Amar was kept at prison for 3 years and later sent to a juvenile home, mostly in solitary confinement. He was released in 2016 when he turned 18. As of now, he is a free man with a different name and identity in a different city. Psychiatrists summarize that he might be suffering from conduct disorder that prevents him from knowing the difference between right and wrong. This is where it gets confusing, because during the interrogation, he said he wanted to confess because his parents had taught him that lying was bad. This case really got us questioning if a serial killer was made or born, or a little bit of both.